Recently, I've been obsessing over colorful movies. I've revisited films like Zola, Midsommar, Enter the Void, as well as Carlo Mirabella Davis's Swallow. Now, all of these movies are fantastic and use color not only to communicate emotion, but also as a full-on storytelling device to show tonal shifts or changes in character arcs. Swallow caught my eye as a shining example of this technique. Mirabella Davis and fellow cinematographer Caitlin Arizmendi build a story that is so visually compelling, you could watch the movie on mute and still completely understand the plot, the tone, and the character development. So before we get into this, let's quickly go over the film's themes and then look at the colors, the patterns they build, and how the movie achieves its payoff. Swallow is a movie about trauma and control. Our main character, Hunter, is a woman born from rape, an event from which she has no closure. This has led her to live in an excessively repressed and submissive manner.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
Her husband Richie is the complete opposite. He and his family are self-absorbed and controlling over all of Hunter's decisions. Her existence is defined by what she can offer him, not by who she is. Early in the film, Hunter falls pregnant, which causes her repressed trauma to suddenly bubble up to the surface in the form of an identity crisis. A crisis that physically manifests in a need to consume increasingly dangerous objects. Now that that's out of the way, let's get into the colors, but just as a quick warning, there are heavy spoilers ahead. The movie's exposition establishes rules that are strictly followed when it comes to the three primary colors: blue, red, and yellow. Richie is introduced center frame, surrounded by mirrors and dressed in the color blue, a color that will consistently be associated with him and his family. The color represents power, masculinity, and control, something that's accompanied Richie ever since birth.
Then he was born blue.
Blue.
Slate blue.
Throughout the film, the color envelops Hunter in the moments where she has the least control, no matter where she is. It's a great compositional play on light, costume, and set design that indicates Hunter's state of mind, even when it's deeply subconscious. On the opposite end of the spectrum are shades of red and pink. These colors speak to Hunter's true self, representing her independence, her femininity, and her empowerment. Just as with blue, Hunter's surrounded by reds in scenes where she's in control of her decision-making. The color manifests itself in various ways throughout the film, at times almost overwhelming, and at others in a muted or hidden way, indicating how she feels internally about what's happening around her. Take the first scene where Hunter consumes an object, the marble. She's wearing a full blue outfit, indicating that lack of control, which makes sense as she's just found out she's pregnant 6 minutes prior, an event that she's very unsure about. In the scene, Hunter swallows a red marble almost like a piece of medicine, but before doing so, she holds it up to a window and allows the red light to dance around her. It's a surreal moment augmented by sounds of the ocean and laughing children, and it marks a crucial point in Hunter's character arc, the beginning of her identity crisis. In the following scene, for the first time in the movie, she's fully clothed in pink. The dialogue's playful and the camera switches to handheld, reinforcing that emotional change. This is a straightforward yet effective way Mirabella Davis communicates the film's overarching themes and its character's state of mind through color. So we've covered blue and red, but what about yellow? This one's a little bit more subtle, but in this film, I believe it represents childhood, innocence, and to a certain extent, naivety. Hunter's typically seen wearing yellow at times where she represses how she feels for herself, rather than for Richie. We see it first in her underwear as she observes her pregnant belly in the mirror, and again at Richie's birthday party. The first example communicates Hunter's acceptance of her pregnancy being false, a sort of naivety of the self, whereas the second example is one where she fools herself about her own recovery. When she learns that everyone at the party knows what she's going through, her facade breaks down and her impulses return. So we've got masculinity, femininity, and childhood. Individually, these colors play a powerful role on telling us the true stakes of a scene, but Mirabella Davis pushes this concept further by building patterns throughout the film. And if you pick up on them, they tell a second visual story that accompanies the film's dialogue and action. Hunter's journey is chronicled through the colors that surround her from start to finish. In the movie's first act, Hunter is almost exclusively seen enveloped in blue, first dancing at dusk, then at Richie's dinner, and then again when she discovers she's pregnant. again when she prepares the nursery and strolls around the house, and this consistency indicates that she's completely submissive to Richie and his expectations of her. Now, when we get to the climax of Act 1, where Hunter eats the marble, we see her clothing change to pink. From this moment forth, the pattern of blue to pink repeats itself. Hunter fades into Richie's blues until they become overwhelming, at which point she consumes an object and, quite literally, her true colors come out. Of course, this balancing act isn't easy for Hunter, as it represents her internal struggles. Let's look at another way this pattern manifests. For example, when Hunter cleans and digs in the toilet for the objects she consumes. You notice anything? Of course, the gloves and the cleaning product are both vivid blue. The sequence repeats itself, showing us how, after being herself, Hunter needs to put her facade back up, a facade that's quickly crumbling. One of my favorite scenes in the film is when Richie comes home drunk with his work friends, surprising Hunter while she was alone. Look how they intrude on her space in the frame, on her colors. Richie smothers her, he violates her space. And the next thing we see is a blue reflection of Hunter as she adorns a blue shawl over her pink nightgown, once again falling away from herself into the role she's been assigned. This struggle between the two colors is reflective of Hunter's identity crisis, her trauma, and her lack of autonomy. When she finally flees, her clothing is black for the first time in the film and remains this way until she figures out how to resolve that trauma that's followed her since birth. This is where Marabella Davis's color theory pays off in the most subtle yet powerful way possible. Hunter figures out that to resolve her issues, she needs to confront her biological father, her mother's rapist. She arrives at his home in the midst of his birthday party. The set design for this scene is extremely balanced. The colors are evenly distributed and there's an emphasis on symmetry. Now, this balance is something Hunter has never had or felt. We might recall the nursery decorations, the only other scene that also had a balance between red, yellow, and blue, but somehow there it felt artificial and cold. And Hunter doesn't find Erwin, her father, to be a cruel or evil man. He has a smiling child, a loving wife, and a stable home. The confrontation that follows between the two is raw, loaded, and painful.
Why'd you do it?
And I believe perfectly captures the film's concept.
Am I like you?
That we aren't responsible for what came before us.
Are you?
That we aren't defined by the actions of our forefathers or our partners, but by our own.
No.
Of course, we can't avoid the internal struggles that come with being human as we try to understand who we are and why we're here. Those questions come with tremendous weight. But I think what Carlo Mirabella Davis tries to show us is that letting go of what came before and accepting the unknown that is to come lightens the load. That we are who we are and that nobody can take that from us.